little reminder that rose pruning is done around Valentine's Day. And we do this because it's a time that we often think about roses. So it's just a good reminder. But is it the perfect timing for pruning your roses? I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Kind of depends upon the weather, of course. And the weather doesn't always observe what the calendar says it should do. This year in North Texas, we've had a pretty mild winter. We've dipped down into the 20s maybe 2 or 3 times. Um, if you look at most plants, they're kind of not completely dormant. I still have at my house in town, I still have Turk's cap that looks like nothing has happened to it. And I have a pepper plant on my porch that's been outdoors all winter and seems fine. So it's been kind of a mild winter. Things are not fully dormant. That's going to be okay if we're just kind of rolling on into spring with this same weather pattern. But we can always hit that horrible late freeze where it gets really cold late after everything has come out. And with pruning timing, you're always wanting to kind of push up against the beginning of spring, because once you prune something, it usually does start growing, and you don't want that to happen too early. That's why fruit trees, everybody kind of waits till the end of February to prune. That's why vineyards are pruned late. They kind of do maybe what they call rough pruning and then cleanup pruning later. So it's always great to time it perfectly. It's almost always impossible to know what the weather's going to do. So Valentine's Day is as good as it gets. So we just remind ourselves on that day that roses need to be pruned. Of course, if you're managing many landscapes and you have lots and lots of roses, which you may not have nowadays as in the past, you obviously cannot prune them all on Valentine's Day. So you're just going to have to, once the new year rolls around, January, February, just start working on pruning roses. So why do we prune roses? Well, a couple of things. One, we want to manage the size. And if you remember, this is a picture of my roses at my farm in April. And if you see those roses, they are getting pretty darn big. I did not prune them last winter, and they were about 6 feet tall, which is a little bit taller than I'd like to have them. So one reason we do it is just to keep the size of something down. And knockout roses are pretty good at getting pretty big. If you're managing roses in a median or something like that, obviously you've got to think about visibility. So just keeping the size in check is one of the reasons to prune roses. Another reason is to remove the dead and diseased growth. Roses almost always end up with a few dead old canes in them. You need to kind of go in there periodically and get those out. We will talk a little bit more about overwintering mites, but also if you've got just diseased plant material, old leaves, like now we all have old leaves on our roses that might have some black spot or something like that, just getting that inoculum out of the way for sanitation reasons, and Dr. Ong can probably talk all day about this, is good. The next one also kind of has to do with disease management. You want air circulation around roses. Even these landscape shrub roses that we tend to plant really close together will do better if there's more space between the leaves and the canes in the individual plants. And if there's space between plant to plant, they will just have fewer problems with disease. Even these disease-resistant roses will do better if there's more air around them. When we talk about Rose Rosette disease too, that's another great tip, is to space roses out instead of planting them like the ones at my house where they're touching each other. Finally, rejuvenation, just to get them started growing in the spring. It's good to prune them back. They'll come out and start growing. You'll get rid of the old dead parts and get fresh new growth and fresh flowers soon. All right. Well, overwintering vector here. This is actually on my desk, and here he is up close and personal. My favorite little piece of swag from a horticulture meeting ever, a 3D printed Areophyid mite. Phyllocoptes fructiphilus right here in much larger sizes than you find them in nature, and also a much brighter color because I think they're kind of like light yellow in real life. But these guys overwinter as adults underneath the bark or in the bud scales or on the foliage or just somewhere on rose tissue. So if you remove half of the rose bush, like I did to this one, you're going to remove a whole bunch of those overwintering mites and just reduce their population. That does mean you need to take that material that you remove and dispose of it properly away from your plants, but you can get rid of a bunch of mites by doing this. Took this right out of the University of Florida's Featured Creatures about this particular pest. And you will see that there's a lot of weird stuff in there. I don't know, this is one kind of creepy insect, but two things I want you to notice. The mated adult females are the overwintering stage. So they're ready to start reproducing as soon as the weather warms up, which is bad because that means we can start transmitting this disease. And though their feeding is not really significant most of the time, you can just build up a big population really quickly. So these can go from egg to adult in about 1 week, depending upon the temperature. I assume that that's warm temperatures, but still. Ugh. Another thing about these guys is that they like a lot of humidity. So there's usually a lower population when it's really dry. So if you have a whole lot of plant material, that creates an environment where there's humidity just next to all those leaves. And so getting rid of just some of that humid environment is also beneficial in managing this pest. When we talked about managing for Rose Rosette, two things you can do right now. Removal and disposal of infected material. Obviously, that's symptomatic material. We used to just say, take it out if it's symptomatic. A lot of times that's the best course of action. But if for some reason you have some rose that you do not want to remove because it's special to you or important in some way, if you want to prune out those symptomatic material, that's great. You should definitely dispose of that. But regular dormant season pruning, even on asymptomatic plants, will remove some of those overwintering mites. So this is, the two things that you can do to just reduce the incidence of Rose Rosette in the landscape in the winter. All right, pruning. I posted this in our Chat with Green Aggies group today, but Dr. Brent Pemberton did a really nice little video where he prunes both a hybrid tea rose and some landscape shrub roses. And he does a nice demonstration. He shows you all his tools, his loppers, his head shears, his hand shears, his pruning saw, his big gloves, all his tools. And he just shows you how he does it. But basically, I would say that most of us, especially in the landscape industry, are going to want to use some kind of fast method. And to do it fast, you can use head shears, you can use mechanized head shears, you can use loppers. I tried it with my chainsaw, and that really kind of tore up a plant pretty badly. So I wouldn't say that a chainsaw is a good method, but you can use something to do a quick prune just to get it down to the size that you want it. I did that with my loppers. This is also a good way to kind of divide up work. If there's someone who just works really fast and moves right along and just kind of, gets the job done and moves on and doesn't look at it too much, that's a great person to put on that first cut. They can just move down the row, get the main part off, get it all to a kind of uniform length. And then someone that's a little bit fussier can come in and kind of do the cleanup part. And in the cleanup part, what you want to do is remove that dead wood. You want to go through and try to cut so that you're at a slant. I mean, that will help it shed water and not decay. And also so that you're cutting above an outward facing bud. Now that's the fussy part. Obviously, you don't have time to do that completely with the landscape rose, but if you have one person doing the rough cut and another person just kind of coming through and cleaning up some problems, I think that's a great way to do it. All right, so here's my roses, the ones you saw in the first picture. Here's how they looked this weekend. It's really beautiful. You can see they still have leaves on them though. So what I did was I took that one on the end and I cut it back hard with loppers and then came back through and kind of made the nice slanted cuts above the bud, took out a little bit of deadwood, and that's what I ended up with. And you can see that it is considerably smaller. So this is a great kind of pruning to do on a day when you really feel like taking out your frustrations on something and just, making a difference in the world in a destructive way. This is a good kind of activity for those days. But it's pretty dramatic, though I'm sure that you won't be able to hardly tell that I did it by the time we get to April. All right, so that's the end of my presentation. I just want to say that, what you want to get rid of with the rose, it's hard to get rid of all the thorns, but you can get rid of the deadwood and you can get rid of the mites if you just take a little bit of time to prune in the next couple of weeks. And that's all I've got for you. So I'm going to stop sharing and let Dr. Kevin Ong, when he is ready, put his screen up.
All right, folks. I was asked to do an update on Rose Rosette, and what's been interesting is there's not much been going on. And so I'm going to take this time to point you to resources that has been there, that's been around. We have not kept up with it for the last couple of years very much because there hasn't been any funding to allow that work to continue. I also want to say that my graduate student, Maddie Shires, who had been working on this project, um, got done with her degree last August, well, officially graduated in December. So Dr. Shires now is off to better and bigger things, but she had some things that were done and some things that were partly done, uh, which wasn't finished because of the pandemic. So I'm going to point out a few things about that and point out some warnings here. So what's nice about today, I'm looking at the participants list. I noticed that some of my collaborators are on here, so that's great. I know some of you are in the industry in here, but I also noticed that there are some mask garners on here. So want to be very clear what I'm going to share with you guys today, updates on some of the research. It is not gospel truth. It is basically observations that were made. Um, they are early observations. It is supposed and meant to give us hope when hope is there, um, but it still needs quite a bit of work. So that's the disclaimer, that's the preface. So first things first is whoever is controlling the screen, can you pull up a web browser and go to roserosette.org and share that screen, because I want to point out a couple of things on there that we are still utilizing. Probably not as much as I would have liked, but nonetheless available.
Hey, Kevin, you should be able to share your screen now. I don't think anyone is currently sharing at the moment.
Okay, well, let me see if I can do that.
I'm trying to.
Okay, let's see if I can share that. Okay.
Yay!
You all see that?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, is it doing anything? Well, that's not good.
Not running,
but well, that's fine. Just real brief, wanted to point out one thing. The information that's on here is still there. We haven't updated it as much as we would like to have. The resources link will have a bunch of stuff from other states, not only from Texas, that has information. What I do want to point out is on the reporting side. People are still reporting in suspected
Hey, baby.
cases of
Got
Rose
done with
Rosette.
lunch, but my head started hurting again. What the fuck?
Oh boy, somebody
Sorry
has to,
about that. I got him.
all right. Yep, that's the beauty of doing things live. Anyway, on the screen, what I need you guys to understand is that the website still accepts reporting, so we still have a number of folks putting in reports in there. Unfortunately, due to the lack of funding, not many of us actually go and verify those reports as quickly as perhaps some people would like. I know there's probably a bottleneck of some that it's about 4 months, 5 months old. I think I'm the only one in Texas right now that's clearing Texas stuff. But the main thing that I kind of keep an eye out for is more of those new areas that we have not had a report of Rose Rosette. If a suspect pops up there, that's what I try to take a look at. What would be most helpful to y'all would be the distribution map. Now, I am not sure. There you go. That distribution map has the whole, what do you call it, country, but it allows you to kind of get into at least some granular information. So if you actually go and roll your cursor or the finger pointing thing across your county, it talks about how many times it's been reported. Now, I do want to point out one thing here. I think I found out that the reported usually, I don't think we have filtered out yet. It is suspect and it is positive. If it's, I think if it's negative, it does not show up. So wherever that's green, you know that there has been a verified case of Rose Rosette. So I'm going to ask you guys, especially those of you here in Texas, if you don't see your county on this map, then please think about submitting a report if you find one, and take some good pictures. More than likely, if it actually gets my attention, I'll be asking for a sample to confirm it. One interesting thing I want you guys to note, especially out in the high plains, rolling plains, all those green areas actually corresponds with urban areas. So what is it, Midland, Odessa Midland area? So Midland and Ector counties. Then Taylor County would be Abilene, Lubbock area, and of course Randall County is the Amarillo area. So it seems to be where, at least where we have picked it up or samples have been sent in, it has been in those urban type situations. So from the Rose Rosette website, realize the reporting function is still available. The distribution map is a great way to still figure out, you know, where Rose Rosette might be at the county level. So please continue to use that. We are in the process of submitting a new proposal to the Specialty Crop Research Initiative Program. And hopefully, if it does get funded, we can continue to do some more work to update and utilize this sites for some additional stuff, including trials.
Sorry, Kevin, can you put it back up real quick? I just
Wait.
wanted to.
Hang on.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
But I didn't want to not say it.
Yeah, there you go.
So for quite a while, everybody thought that Rose Rosette disease was not going to occur south of I-20. Remember that, Kevin? Like,
yeah,
that the mites were just not down there south of I-20, and we've really busted through that in Texas in a big way. But I also was interested in seeing these like Florida findings.
So the findings in Florida, I want to point out one thing here. This are all photo pictures. So, hey, Gary, if you're on, I think I saw your name there. Can you help verify some of those by chance? But as far as this one goes, it's just by picture.
Okay.
Oh,
They were saying in the
thank-
chat, to be honest, I'm still not sure about the Florida sites.
Thank you. So a lot of this are just, with photos. So again, this is where we come into some of the how we interpret what we see. So this chart here basically takes pictures and verifies it. In some cases, we do ask for samples and verify it through a PCR testing, looking for the virus. On those cases, we can say confirm the virus is present. So this chart does not tell the whole story. So, hey, Dr. Mark Wyndham is on. So, Dr. Wyndham, basically, what did he say on the
He says many of the Florida sites were transplanted plants and the disease did not spread to other plants and the affected plants were destroyed.
So there you go. So you have some additional information, and the bug lady also, I think we had a chat about chili thrips not too long ago. So if you guys remember in Texas, what was it, 10 years ago? We had chili thrips issue, and there was again a scare of when we had Rose Rosette. Was it Rose Rosette or was it chili thrips? And there was some mistaken identity there. So I'll dial back a little bit and say thanks to Laura for being kind to me, because those many years ago, I was the pathologist on record who said, oh, we'll never see Rose Rosette far below the I-20 line. But lo and behold.
When we went to that meeting where they gave me this fabulous, 3D printed mite, there was a presentation about it. They were scouting, it was just like, I was like, wait.
I know, and I did say that, and one of the things that we have noticed, at least this from Maddie's work, was that we think we don't have mite counts and all that, but it seems that the mite population does increase during the late part of spring and early part of summer, which is kind of hot in Texas. So it goes against some of the things that had been suggested or said by some of the mite people, and I'm going to use the word of Dr. Wyndham, Mark Wyndham, the mitologist. It's not a real word, by the way, but they do. Surprisingly, we find them in hot areas. That's why you see them popping up in Bexar County and Llano and Travis and so on. So the question is, how far further south will they go, or will we find them? So that, I think, it's going to be quite interesting in that. So let me real quickly run through some of the things that Maddie did. Again, remember, this is research. This is very preliminary, and I'm going to put it out there is this is trying to get our imaginations to go, what if? So one of the things Maddie did towards the end of a study period was to look at the transmission of the Rose Rosette virus in seeds, keeping in mind here trying to get information for breeders. It's we don't have that information before. We don't believe that it can be moved through seeds. But one of the first tests that Maddie did was she got a very low percent of seedlings that were recovered had or tested positive for Rose Rosette virus. Now, one interesting thing is as some of these things get older, sometimes you might actually get a positive hit, sometimes you don't. So we don't know what's going on, because could it be the test that's getting interference with some of the materials that are in the growing seedling or not? The second time she did it with a little bit more controls, with a little bit more information based from that first round of experiments, I don't think she got any positives. So the question's still out there. Is it transmitted? Can it be seed transmitted? Short answer is we don't know. It seems like it was or was able to be seed transmitted, but when we do a little bit more stringent tests, it doesn't seem to be there. So this is one of those things that some more work needs to be done. The other thing that Maddie did, which we were trying to sort out, was to answer the question that folks ask us: are there plants that we can plant that are resistant, that don't get the virus? Short answer to that is we don't think so. I mean, almost everything that we have tested, you might have one or two that actually get that virus. But by far, what we did notice is there are a number of roses that basically may have the virus in it, or we could detect the virus in it, it would be the better term, but does not show any symptoms. So in some cases, we use the word tolerance there because it can be infected, so the virus is present, but we don't see any symptoms. One of those varieties is what, Carefree Beauty, or yeah. And we hardly, I don't think we've ever seen symptoms on that, even though we pick up the virus. So the question is, what does that mean? Is it something that's usable? In a landscape where it's high pressure, probably, but the question is still out there is, if you utilize this or move it around in trade and you have a plant that's infected, will it act as a carrier, perhaps inadvertently into a new area? So there's still a lot of questions out there. And I'm going to kind of quit right here. And if you guys got questions, stick it in the chat. I don't want to take too much time here, but I do want to plug something that Dr. Mark Wyndham, I guess it's going to have coming out in the American Rose Society magazine. So he's going to write about funding, or the lack thereof right now, for roses, but he is addressing a number of those concerns in terms of the disparity between research and what's happening on the ground, and what are some things to consider as we move forward in terms of what we want to achieve at the end in getting roses that perhaps do not get sick or infected from Rose Rosette. So what time is it? 12:41. So I think we got enough time for Paul. And so to Dr. Wyndham, Mark, if you want to say a few words, and I mean brief, no more than 5, you can unmute it, because Erfan will cut you off at 5 minutes.
I've actually cut off all of our participants already just due to inadvertent unmutings, but I can give Dr. Wyndham the ability to unmute himself here if he so wishes to say anything.
Yeah, if you wish to say anything. Otherwise, you can let me say my stuff. But
Kevin, you did fine. I can't imagine how I could add to anything you said.
Oh yeah, you could.
Dr. Alan Wyndham or Mark Wyndham?
Dr. Mark Wyndham.
But
We're
both of
both-
them are on.
We're both on.
Oh, you're
I know both
on.
of you are on, so I was just curious which one of you was speaking. Hey, Mark, you were saying that the I-20 is holding in Mississippi and Alabama, mostly so just below I-20 in Louisiana, but further south in Georgia. And of course, there's no funding to look at it. But is it possible the urbanization around I-20 in those states, in Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, and Georgia, would the urbanization have anything to do with this? And when I say urbanization, the more urban that place is, the more likely they're going to plant a lot of knockout roses, or stuff like that. What do you think?
Whether it's knockouts or not, the more urban areas you have, the more movement of plants you're going to have into an area. And we definitely know that both the virus and the mites have been brought into new areas on plants and budwood and things like that. Whether there are environmental factors going on, whether in the deep south there's some type of mite pathogen going on, We don't know. We've made hypotheses, but we don't have the funding to look at that.
So Cherie, right in chat, what about miticides? And Laura did mention that Mark Wyndham has some data on that. I believe some of the preliminary stuff may be found on the roserosette.org website, but I believe Dr. Wyndham is also going to mention that in the upcoming article at the in the American Rose Society magazine. So Mark, hey, if you have a chance to get a link, if that article is available online, would you share that link with us so we can post it on
the article is coming out in the January, February issue. It should be out very soon. Once it's out, I'm sure I'll be able to get you a link. I have to wait until it's published.
Thanks, and we'll try and post it on chat with Green Aggies. So those of you that are on here are curious about the miticide or some of the other questions that will raise up, plus more, we'll be able to get a chance to read that article. And also thanks to Dr. Alan Wyndham, that's Dr. Mark Wyndham's brother, for posting the article that was put out or authored by Catherine Solo, Dr. Mark Wyndham's former graduate student, on that survey of mites. So that's also a good read. If y'all like to take a look and see how the mite is distributed, at least in that survey area. I'll put it this way: Texas is a big state/country. Maps keep changing, and we have the range has moved further south than I ever expected. And we'll continue to keep an eye out and populate at least that map that you can find on the roserosette.org. And oh yeah, and in the chat too, there was a question about Top Guns, and I think Laura, yep, and I think we tested that too, right, Laura, from you that you sent to us, and Maddie got a positive out of it. So there you go. So thanks. Not too much time. Over to you, Paul. And by the way, since this is the rose thing, remember, go out and get roses. Valentine's Day is coming up.
All right. Well, thank you, Kevin. Okay, so I am going to talk about the Earthkind program, which probably started in the mid to late 90s here in Texas. It is an evaluation program, especially for the roses, which has now turned into sort of a landscape program, but it's a very sustainable approach to growing not only roses, but other landscape plants. It takes the best principles of both organics and traditional landscaping. And the main thing is when we do a trial, we do pull a soil sample, but then we amend the soil. Soil preparation is key. We amend the soil with a 3-inch layer of compost. We plant, we use drip irrigation, we mulch, and that is about it. There's very little input besides that. We do not spray, no fertilizer, no additional fertilizer, no fungicides, no pesticides. And the drip irrigation is really just for that first year to get those plants established. Once they are established, it's the second year was used very sparingly, and by the third year, no additional water was put in, just whatever Mother Nature could have supplied to that. So it's a really good concept and practice to utilize, whether commercially or for your own home. The website down here is a good link, and that's for the roses, and it will also take you to the Earthkind landscape site also. So some additional information there. What I want to do is talk about, there's currently 21 roses that are designated as Earthkind roses. And so they're broken up into 3 groups. We've got some that are in small or small shrubs, others that are medium, and then we've got several climbers. So what I did today was just picked out a small shrub, a medium, and a climber that fell into that achieved this designation. So the first one is the fairy, which is classified as a polyantha. So polyanthas, think of it as they produce like a cloud of flowers, not minis, but larger than a mini type flower, but it's usually in clusters. This was established or introduced into the trade in 1932. Landscape height is 3 by 4, so it is a nice, tight, compact producer. And you can see in these images how the flower production is over the entire plant in this image on the right-hand side. These small double light pink flowers, the other good thing is it is a repeat bloomer. So you'll get that spring flush, and then you'll get potential flushes throughout the rest of the growing season. The fairy does not have any fragrance, so that added benefit is not available with the fairy, but it is quite hardy. You can see from zone 4 through 9. So if you're looking for a small, compact, light pink rose to put on quite a show in the spring, consider growing the fairy. The other one is I think Kevin mentioned Carefree Beauty, and this is sort of the positive control. This is the one we know is probably one of the best earth kind roses out there. The trial that we did down here in Houston, this was one of our controls as a comparison, and it topped out in as number either 2 or 3. So we know it's a good, strong performer. It's a great shrub rose. It's going to top out at about 5 feet by 5 feet. I would say ours probably even got a little bit bigger. The trial that we had, they were not even pruned. We just let them go throughout the full 3 years of production. Great flower production. It's a darker pink on this rose. The other thing is interesting is the hips are very prominent after it goes out of bloom. So you've got some other additional interest there if you don't prune those out. It does have a moderate fragrance, so it's not one that will knock your socks off, but there is a light fragrance there with Carefree Beauty, and it also is a repeat bloomer, so it's nice. Even in the heat of the summer here, we would get some sporadic blooming, and we're talking August when we're 90+% humidity and 90+ degrees with the heat index of 110, 111. This thing would still throw sporadic blooms. And it's interesting because it was developed by Griffith Buck, and he was up in Iowa. So it was introduced into the trade in 77. And some, especially in our area or here down in Texas, we might find it as a Katy Road pink. It was a found rose with the rose rustlers, and then they were able to trace it back that it is actually Carefree Beauty. So this is one of the medium-sized roses that are in the earth kind designation. And the last one, I've got a climber on there. So climbing pinky. This is a climbing polyantha introduced in 52. You can see the height on this one, since it is a climber, going to get up to about 10 feet tall, about 7 feet wide. I've seen this as sort of a rambler where they just let it grow as a spreading shrub. Again, medium pink, semi-double blooms. This is just a spring bloomer. It does have it is a repeat bloomer, and it does have a light fragrance. The one thing that's nice about it is the thorns are very sporadic on it, very few thorns. So if you do have to get in there to prune or clean it up, it is one that you're not going to tear your hands or your wrists or your elbows up getting in there because the thorn production is quite sparse on it. So if you have any other questions, or you want to see what other plants are or what other roses are in the mix, check out that website that I had the link on that first slide. And we do continue to look at other roses in this program to see what other potential roses we can add with the earth kind designation. So Thank you. Let me stop sharing here.
There are a couple questions in the chat there. One of them is, does the climbing pinky bloom on old or new wood?
Well, since it is a repeat bloomer, that early spring bloom will probably be on some of the older wood. But since it does repeat, the new growth will also produce flower buds.
I think you got one more, which is, many of us have climbers. Is there someone who can give us a synopsis on pruning climbers?
Well, Laura, since you just covered the pruning, what are your thoughts? I know I had one in the past, and a lot of times this time of year, I would just thin it. If it was getting too aggressive or too long, I might, cut off that growing point up top. But most of the times it's a thin rather than a heavy prune that you would do on your, typical shrub roses. What are your thoughts, Laura?
I agree. And also on our chat, it's like, I just got it up to the top of the trellis. Well, yeah, you don't want to whack it back down. Obviously, you're trying to get it to grow long. I think a lot of the concerns people have about pruning climbers is that whole old wood, new wood issue. And some of them, especially maybe some older cultivars, bloom on old wood. So if you prune them too heavily, then you may not get any flowers. So that's the big concern. But I don't think they need to be pruned heavily like hybrid teas or shrub roses even do need to be pruned. Just kind of take out dead wood, clean them up a little bit and let them go.
I agree.
Hey, Laura, if it's all right, I'd like to share my screen to show people what's up next for the next month or so. Let me share my screen here. Whoop. Can y'all see that?
Yes.
All right. So we are at January 28th. So if you're wondering what's up next, we have here on our agenda for next week is our arboriculture focus. So that's going to be tree survivors, and Grimes Triangle, and pruning tips. After that, we're going to recontinue our cycle, going to turf grass, nursery, and greenhouse, and landscape. So make sure you stay tuned. Register at that sixleggedaggie.com/CWGA. That's for Chat with Green Aggies. And you can register for them, all of them, and you should be able to add them all to your calendar. I know some of you have had some technical glitches with adding them all. And so you might just, register for them one at a time, or just create a recurring event in your calendar for each Thursday. It should be the same. Join link once you register for all these Thursdays until March 25th. And then from then, we're going to create basically a new, you'll get a new registration link once you register for the new subset. So you can go ahead and get on that. And this is our schedule coming up. And yeah, and also just make sure I put in the chat our Qualtrics survey. So it helps a lot to get feedback from our attendees. And it also demonstrates some impact to show that what we're doing actually matters, which is very important for us to continue putting effort into it. So please do fill out those surveys. It really helps us out. And that's all I got.